I'm Zach, and you're watching What's Up Waterloo, the seasonal adventure show led by me, the park interpreter at the Eddy Discovery Center. In this series, we will explore the natural resources and recreation offered throughout the Mitten's largest state park, Waterloo, whilst hopefully getting up close and personal with some of our local wildlife. Come with me on today's trail adventure, from the Discovery Center to the bog. What's Up Waterloo? Hey everyone, I'm Zach, the park interpreter here at Waterloo State Recreation Area. I'm under the Discovery Center archway leading up to the building, and today we are going to be going on a hike out through the backcountry of Waterloo to view some different wildlife and look at some of the landforms that make this landscape unique. So come with me and let's go see what we can find. So we're going to be headed right down to the bog trail behind me this way. If you were looking for more of an inside adventure, we do have the Eddy Discovery Center just the other way, and that is a great option if you want to learn more about Waterloo without necessarily getting miles into the trail. Let's go everyone, we're going to venture out and get our miles in. Waterloo was formed by glaciers around 20,000 years ago during the last ice age, when there were glaciers that were miles high covering this area. When that ice started to melt from those glaciers, it revealed a lot of different landforms and pockets of unique soil. Waterloo is actually the most biodiverse state park in Michigan, with 31 different plant habitats. To our left, we can see what is called an oak hickory forest. It's an abundant forest type throughout southeast Michigan in those higher elevated dry places. And on a lot of moraines with those dry areas, you might find oak hickory forests. As we continue to walk though, you're gonna definitely see a change in some of the ecosystem. So this is a great border right between those two ecosystems I was mentioning, because of that glacial landscape creating a lot of different ecosystems. To our left, we can see the oak hickory forest that loves the dry areas up on that hillside, kind of on top of that gravel that was placed here. When to our right, we can see the deep depressions that are the hardwood swamp. And that is going to be a really vital ecosystem as we keep walking. That's going to host a lot of the wildlife we're going to see today. We're going to see quite a lot of different understory plants on the forest floor, but there's going to be some that stick out to you because they're quite abundant. This time of year, early spring, you're going to often see two different types of plants dominating the forest floor. One is going to be May-apples, and the other is going to be skunk cabbage. The first one that I mentioned is this guy right here, May-apple. You're going to be able to identify it by its umbrella top that kind of lays open like an umbrella. And as they're younger, they will be a little bit more pointed downwards, sort of like a rocket shaped. And so people will refer to them as little rocket plants or umbrella plants, but it's going to be called the May-apple. So let's go check out skunk cabbage and see what that one looks like. That is right here to my left. You can see this is what is known as skunk cabbage. Right now it is quite fully bloomed and those leaves are unfurled, but earlier on in the season, it does look like a almost alien embryo starting to pop out of the earth. They're one of the first plants to come out of the ground early on in the year. They're able to release heat due to a chemical process inside of them, and that release of heat allows them to melt some snow on the surface and start to pop up before any of the other plants get a chance to, which allows them to be one of those most dominant plant types early on in the spring. One of the most important aspects of the different habitats we have here in Waterloo is the abundance of our vernal pool systems. All across Waterloo, you're going to find a bunch of standing water in early spring, and much of this standing water is going to be what's known as a vernal pool. Vernal simply means part of the year, and is a pool that's going to be here for only part of the year. You might also see a lot of these different logs. When we look down, we can see there's a lot of moss covering the surface of all of these downed logs. Part of the cycling process within the hardwood swamp is the cycle of trees growing really large to the point where maybe they can't support themselves anymore, uprooting in a storm and falling down. Then on top of that, those mosses provide ground for other plants to start taking shape to diversify the landscape a bit more. So if you're familiar with plants at all, or specifically flowers, this one may ring a bell for you. This is Trillium. Trillium is a really abundant flower in these drier forest types, much throughout Waterloo. And they're gonna range from this bright white to a darker pink color, but they're always gonna have these 3 leaves as well as the 3 petals. These are gonna bloom between April and May, generally late April, once that snow melt is all gone and we're starting to get a lot of days consistently above freezing. We now are immersed in that swamp again, and on both sides we can see this skunk cabbage just engulfing everything. Later in the year, as things come along, we're gonna start to see an abundance of ferns here. So later in the year, as it gets hotter, we're gonna see that switch. And once those ferns are starting to get present, we know it's still moist in this area, but it is a little bit drier. There's not as much moisture as there was in the spring when these skunk cabbage popped up. And you can see right here, all along here, there are a bunch of different ferns already starting to make their appearance. So we made it out here to the floating bog. If you look around, you can see that there are a bunch of different plants around me, but we're actually on top of a body of water. What we're on is called a floating bog because all of this area is built upon a floating mass of moss. If you were to take a walk through the bog of Waterloo and take a dip down into it, let's just say you might be there for a while. This stick right here, I have nestled down in there, is about taller than me. And so as you can see, deeper than me, it's covered in this thick sludge. So if you were to fall into that, there's probably not an easy chance of you getting out, right? So that's why when you are in a bog, you do want to stay on the boardwalk and not in the muck or on the side, because even on the moss, you can still find weak spots, which will make you sink down into the mud. So when you're walking around, you may want to start looking for some different critters. The easiest way to do that is to find a log, and you're gonna flip it over. Since we do have eastern Massasauga rattlesnakes, typically you wanna flip it towards yourself, so if there's a snake, it will go away from you. But once you get it flipped, you can look for any movement. I see some worms, a millipede down in there. It is quite common to find millipedes early in the springtime. They're one of our largest decomposers and cyclers of nutrients here in the forest. Along with our slugs, these guys are gonna be in the forest floor munching on all of this litter and leaf litter, turning it into that compost or that organic matter that cycles back into the soil. And typically when you do it in more wet areas, you're gonna find things like salamanders or any of those things that might need that moist area. It's one of the really common ones to find when flipping a log is a blue spotted salamander, or different types of salamanders here in Waterloo. We can tell this guy is a blue spotted salamander based on its blue dots here on the side and on its feet, with that dark brownish, reddish, black color covering the rest of its body. You can see this one is pretty large. It's about longer than my pointer finger. And so this guy is most likely feeding on larger insects, worms, and they are gonna be found in all of those moist, wet areas. And so that is our blue spotted salamander. Here, friends, we have an American bullfrog. We can see by how large she is that it's a bullfrog versus a green frog, just from that sheer size. When we're looking at a bullfrog, they are one of the largest predators in the pond here in Waterloo. Can live up to 8 years. They'll get about 8 inches big and can be as large as 1 pound. And they can eat things like crayfish, worms, insects, small birds, and other frogs. We can tell its gender based on this circle behind the ear. That is their hearing organ. It vibrates to let them hear sound waves, and depending on the size of that, we can tell whether it's male or female. If it is smaller than the eye or the same size, we know it's female. But if it's larger, if it's larger than the eye, we know it's a male. And so this one we can tell is a female, which means this time of year, right around the end of May, or mid-May, she's gonna start laying her eggs. We can look and see they are powerful jumpers. If you look how long that leg is, you can see that leg is extremely powerful and muscular. And they have those webbed feet, so that way they are extremely great swimmers in the water. So that is our American bullfrog.
Now that we have finished our hike from the Eddy Discovery Center down to the Tamarack Floating Bog and discovered some awesome critters along the way, we are now going to head on over to the lake that we saw earlier from underneath the Discovery Center archway. We're going to hop in a kayak and see what else we can find. Let's go.
So we're down here today at the Mill Lake boat launch. The Mill Lake is the lake that when you're up at the Discovery Center, you're going to be able to see it from the parking lots. Mill Lake is a large kettle pond or kettle lake. Kettles or kettle holes are landforms that were left behind by the glaciers 12,000 years ago. When a piece of ice would break off from the glacier as it was melting, it would fall off, hit the ground, and form a depression. And over time, that would melt and create these large depressions lined with different types of glacial silt, clay, gravel, and so it allows water to stay inside. So throughout Waterloo, we have a lot of these lakes. We have over 13 lakes in Waterloo. So a lot of different area to go paddling, boating, swimming. And today, we're gonna go out on this kayak. Whenever I'm kayaking, I always want to make sure that I'm getting into the boat with 2 hands on either side. We always like to say we want 3 points of contact with the boat at all times. So as I'm stepping in, I'm gonna make sure I have 2 points of contact here, and then third, and then I'm gonna sit my butt down, come in, and then scoot on off. And now we're off. So as I'm paddling out on Mill Lake, I'm hearing a lot of birdsong. This is a great area for bird watching. So yeah, these emergent marshes are gonna be great habitat for some of the other wildlife you might think of being lakeside, like a muskrat or a mink, maybe even an otter. When you guys are out hiking or paddling through Waterloo, be mindful that hunting and fishing are open in the recreation area. So when you're out on your kayak, you may see anglers trying to get the largest catch, or while hiking, you might see turkey hunters from late April all the way till May trying to get the tom with the longest beard. Waterloo is a really amazing place that belongs to all of Michigan's residents. And I invite you to come out to create your own adventure. Whether you meet us out on the trail or in the Discovery Center, we hope to see you soon so that way you can come enjoy Michigan's natural resources. If you would like to see more episodes in the future, maybe the seasonal change, be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel to see future adventures with me on What's Up Waterloo.